Hello, I'm Graham Clater, TCA number CM570, and I'm here to introduce this video cassette of the operation of a collection of Carlisle and Finch toy trains and trolleys that was made in January 1984. This will be followed by a little vignette of the operation of some old and new live steam 1-gauge toy trains that took place 2 years later in January 1986. Before turning to this, however, I'd like to say a few words about the Carlisle and Finch Company of Cincinnati. Most people know that Carlisle and Finch was the first successful toy electric train and trolley manufacturer in this country, starting in 1896. What is not generally realized, however, is that this company for the next 15 years was the leader of the toy train industry in this country. As a matter of fact, at the heyday of their operations, probably from about 1905 to 1908, Carlisle and Finch made far more trains and trolleys than all the other American toy electric train manufacturers put together. Around 1910 to 12, Lionel, Ives, Boltamp, and others began to come to the fore, and in 1915, after 20 years of toy train and trolley production, Carlisle and Finch went out of that business. They did this primarily because their other electrical product lines, mainly in the marine field, were becoming so much more profitable in view of the demand generated by the start of World War I in Europe at that time, that they wanted to devote all of their attention to these more profitable lines, and they would never return to the commercial toy train business. As a matter of fact, Carlisle and Finch is still in existence today, and in fact is probably the largest manufacturer in this country of marine searchlights. Nearly all of our Navy ships have Carlisle and Finch signal searchlights on them now, and the famous SS Delta Queen, the Mississippi River cruise boat, has got 2 large arc searchlights on the wings of its bridge, which were made by Carlisle and Finch in 1925 and 1926 and are still in use. When Carlisle and Finch started in 1896, it is said to have begun its production with a small 4-wheel trolley designed to run on 2-inch gauge 3-rail track. No one has ever found one of these trolleys today. Collectors are still looking for them, for one, and we hope to turn one up one time. But the success of that first trolley was so great that the company decided to go into the business in a major way. The next year, 1897, it changed its track to be 2-rail 2-inch gauge, and all equipment made from 1897 on were made in that configuration. Accordingly, what we shall see is all Carlisle and Finch 2-rail 2-inch gauge made between 1897 and 1915. Before turning to that, I would like to acknowledge the fine background music that we will have for this presentation. It is provided by courtesy of our founding charter and honor roll member, Ward Kimball of San Gabriel, California. Ward was the leader and trombone player in what I think is the finest jazz group we've ever had in this country, called the Firehouse 5+2. They will provide us the background music for what we are about to see. Let's now go back to 1897. There is the Carlisle and Finch number 1 trolley of 1897. The paper label may have originally been a little differently lettered, but that's essentially the way it was when it was offered then, for the first time on 2-rail 2-inch gauge track. The body is all brass, set on a block of wood, with a 2-pole motor inside the body sitting on the wood, connected with the wheels by a pulley arrangement. It's very simple and very crude, but for the time, it was the first toy train that actually ran on electricity that was sold commercially. There is the body with there's the car with the body removed. You can see the rubber band pulley connecting the motor to the wheels. The motor was only 2-pole, and if it stopped on dead center, the car had to be pushed to make it start. But it did run mighty well, as you can see there. There it is with the body removed, showing the pulley arrangement connecting the motor to the wheels. Trolley train. The #1 trolley with 2 trailers that were offered at the same time. The trolley was sold for $2.75 and the trailers for 75 cents. They makes a lovely little trolley train. Around 1904, the same car was modified to have a roof of tin plate painted black, and the paper label was gone, and electric railway was in embossed letters on the side. The car was discontinued in 1907 when improved models had become established. The first improved model was this #42, first offered in 1902. It was substantially improved in that it had a 3-pole self-starting motor that was reversible by a lever on the platform. It had a cast steel underframe and steel cast wheels, which were connected to the motor by spur gearing instead of by pulley. It was a little larger, 5 windows instead of 4, and considerably better looking because of the underframe. The following year, this car was improved even further by having the underframe now made of cast brass and the wheels becoming brass 1.25 inches in diameter. The car in this basic form pretty much continued right to the end of the line in 1915. It runs extremely well and is very versatile. In 1904, the paper label was dispensed with, and the same car continued with electric railway and embossed letters on the side, as happened with most of Carlisle and Finch's equipment in that year. This car, indeed, is the one that is most commonly found now. The brass underframe and wheels and embossed letters on the side. In about 1912, the style was significantly changed. This is the #42 as it was offered from 1912 to 1915. It's too short and too high and rather funny looking. The truck is just a regular steel side frame truck that was used in some of their other cars at the time. This change was undoubtedly made to save money, and it probably did that, enabled them to keep the price at the same level, but it was not a very good looking car. It still ran just as well. And it was all of these 4-wheel trolleys were offered with unpowered trailers. This is the trailer that went with the last model, 1912 to 1915. In 1904, a still better 4-wheel model was offered. This is the #18, one of the longest 4-wheel cars ever made in this size. 13.5 inches long with 4 large windows, cast brass underframe, brass wheels, reversing motor, and generally speaking, a very good looking car. At the same time in 1904, the first open trolley was offered, the #19, also 13.5 inches long, and probably the best looking car of any that Carlisle and Finch offered. The following year, 1905, Carlisle and Finch brought out their overhead trolley system, line-side poles and trolley wire which fed the current into the car through a working trolley. Here is the #18 together with its companion, numbered 99, which is a number 18 car with a trolley added. With this arrangement, it's possible to run two cars on the same track at the same time and control them separately and individually, since one is fed from the track and the other from the trolley wire. This is a number 18 and a number 99 running together around the track, and then we can do the same thing with the open trolleys. The number 19 open trolley had as its companion the number 100 trolley with the trolley wire, trolley pole. And here's a number 19 and a number 100 running around the layout together. Good looking cars. Now we go back to 1897, the year the number 1 trolley came out in two-rail track. This is the number 2 trolley, an 8-wheel car with a motor in each separate truck. Again, it was the old 2-pole motor that was not self-starting and was connected to the wheels with a pulley arrangement. But with 2 motors, the car tended to start any time because only one motor at a time would usually be stopped on dead center. This car had a very good-looking outline, clear-story roof with rounded ends. Later on, Carlisle and Finch did away with the rounded ends, and all the cars of this size had squared-off roofs, as we shall see. But this 1897 car and its trailer are there, and they are very good looking. The trailer was subsequently given the number 13 and was the same car that was used with Carlisle and Finch locomotives as a passenger car. But it initially was offered as the trailer for the number 2 trolley, as you see here. There's the trolley and its trailer running along a piece of track. Around 1902, the body style changed, as I mentioned. This is the number 2 trolley with the changed body style, the squared-off roof line. And this car has only one motor, but that's a 3-pole motor, which is self-starting. It runs just as well as its predecessor. There it goes around the track. This car is identical to the number 13 that was usually found with the number 4 engine. 1903, the next year, Carlisle and Finch introduced its largest and handsomest interurban car. It was given the same number as the trolley, number 2, but it's now called the number 2 interurban. It took the place of the old number 2 trolley that we've just seen. It had a paper label on the side reading Interurban Railway, beautiful cast brass side frames on the trucks, a powerful motor that was connected to all 4 wheels of the truck, and it ran extremely well. The Interurban Railway car was made with that label on the side only in the year 1903. The following year, the label was taken off, and Electric Railway was put in embossed letters on the same car. Except for that, there was no change. This is the 1904 version of the car with trolleys that were first introduced the following year in 1905. It makes an extremely handsome trolley-operated interurban, as you can see. The Carlisle and Finch Company never cataloged this car with trolleys, but in 1906 it put out a little book on miniature electric railways that explained to its customers how they could put trolleys on any of their cars and how they could make various other changes that they might like. This car has accordingly been converted to operate under wire, and it does so extremely well. Just behind the rear trolley, you can see a trolley frog, which is the arrangement that is used to enable the trolley to pass from one wire to another at a switch. The company did not sell any of these, but it's fairly easy to make them. And if you're going to have an overhead trolley railway with switches, it's essential to have trolley frogs. There comes the number 2 interurban with trolley going through the switch, and the trolley following through on the frog. In 1907, the body was changed, and instead of being all brass, it was now nickel-plated. The nickel-plated interurban was put out only in the 2 years 1907 and 1908. This is one of those running around the layout. This is the main line now, has no trolley wire over it, and is made of tubular 2-rail Carlisle and Finch track with wooden ties. In 1908, the body was changed further to this 5-window interurban instead of the smaller windowed 10-windowed interurban. The trucks are also different. Instead of the beautiful cast brass trucks, these are made of sheet steel painted black. The motor is smaller and powers only 1 wheel, not all 4. This was obviously an economy measure, and I think this is not as fine a car as the earlier one, but it does run very well and is still a very handsome car. The body is actually taken from one designed for their only sleeping car, which was put out in 1906 and had the same window arrangement. There is this late model number 2 interurban running around the main line. The car was kept in this form from 1908 through 1915, so that about half the cars you find are in this form. We now have an interurban trolley train, 6 interurban cars coupled together in multiple unit fashion. The lead car has trolleys, but both trolleys are down since there's no wire here, a practice that was used on some prototypes that had 3rd rail in some places and trolley wire in other places. This is quite like the trains that used to run out of Chicago on the North Shore, and some still do on the Chicago South Shore and South Bend Railroad. It provides a very good-looking train. All cars, of course, are powered. That's a Carlisle and Finch bridge that the trolley train is running across, and a Carlisle and Finch station in the foreground. We now go back to 1897 again. The first locomotive put out by Carlisle and Finch was this little mining engine. Like the number 1 trolley, it had a small motor that was connected to the wheels by a series of pulleys. It was lower geared than the trolley and ran more slowly but had more power. It was sold with several of these small mining cars, cast iron bodies with cast iron wheels and wooden bases. In 1899, the style of the mining engine was significantly changed. Large driving wheels with 5 spokes were substituted for the little cast iron wheels, and paper label electric coal mining locomotive was on the outside of the body. That's that 1899 model and a series of mining cars running down the main line after having come out of the mine mouth. These mining engines ran very well and could go into very small tunnels. The mining locomotive was changed around 1904 or 1905 to get rid of the paper label, and in place of that, the words mining locomotive were put on the side in embossed letters. There it comes out of the mine mouth now with 4 cars, the last 2 of which are dump cars, which were introduced around 1903 or 4. All of these cars still have cast iron wheels and wooden blocks as a foundation. The wheels turn on, as the axle is a nail driven into the wooden block on which the wheel turns. About 1909 or thereabouts, the style of the mining locomotive was changed again for the last time. This is a somewhat better looking mining engine, introduced then. The cars now no longer have the cast iron wheels and wooden base, but are brass wheels with steel side frames. That's one of the late model engines that were sold from about 1909 to 1915 with the modern cars. It's been a big day at the mines, and here is the full day's production loaded onto a train on the way to the tipple where the coal can be transloaded to mainline cars. 3 mining locomotives are pulling 18 mining cars down the line. Quite an interesting sight. A late model engine in front and 2 earlier models behind it, with both regular mining cars and dump cars on the rear. Now we turn to the first Carlisle and Finch road locomotive, the number 4. Introduced in 1899, the number 4 consisted of a tin plate body completely covered with pasted paper. There are no windows in the cab of that engine. The paper is pasted over the side, and the window is painted on the paper. The tender had the letters LS and MS Railroad, again printed on paper and pasted on the side, although it's hard to see them in that particular shot. LS and MS, of course, stood for the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railroad, a subsidiary of the New York Central. At the same time, Carlisle and Finch brought out its first freight cars, a number 11 gondola and a number 12 boxcar. There's the 3-car train as it existed in 1899 and 1900, going around the layout. At the same time, the trail car for the number 2 trolley was usable as a passenger car. And here is the 1899 engine and 2 of those early passenger cars that were numbered 13 running around the layout. That is a 85 to 90-year-old locomotive and 2 cars running today just as well as it did at the turn of the century. The early couplers on Carlisle and Finch were modeled on the railroad's Lincoln pin couplers. They were realistic looking, but very poor in operation, because when you tried to back the train up, it would jackknife and derail. As a result, in 1903, those couplers were discontinued, and Carlisle and Finch produced rounded bumper-type couplers that could be connected with U-shaped pins that worked very well. The engine was also remodeled, and instead of a paper label-covered body, it was offered with a nickel-plated boiler, the same tender initially in 1903 with the LS and MS lettering, and a caboose was added. So that by this time we now had a 3-car freight train, which we see here. The rather good-looking locomotive and tender, and a gondola, a boxcar, and a caboose. In 1904 and thereafter, the tender was usually labeled B&O, and the engine varied a little bit in its finish. Always, for the next several years, we had a nickel-plated boiler, and a black smoke box, but the cab was sometimes finished in nickel, sometimes painted black. The roof of the cab was sometimes black and sometimes nickel, so that various combinations did appear in the next 2 or 3 years. This was, however, the most popular engine Carlisle and Finch had, and the one most